Greetings, colleagues across town and across the globe. We've made it to 2022. We've made it to February 17, and that means it's time for a brand new episode of Paul Colby and the Investigators. I'm your host, Paul Colby, and some of my crack investigators, as always, are joining me to bring you up to speed on what's been going on and what's been going down around town, around the globe. These people know things I don't even know, although I should be paying them for the privilege of finding out what they know that I don't know. But you know, I know almost as much as the next guy, the next person. Anyway, you know what it's like here. We cover the stories behind the curtain. And we've been doing it for a long time, and some of you are here because you need to know what we're going to tell you. First thing I'll do, I'll introduce my investigators who've joined me tonight, beginning with Rich Lather. Now, whether you know it or not, he is a proponent of the theology of dread, and that's been true since about 1986. He is also a produce section location consultant for the Some Call It Food grocery chain. That operates in Alaska and Hawaii. That's why you haven't seen any of them around here. He is also, I can't help but notice that Rich is still on his photon diet there. Can't let light rays get in the way of communication. Anyway, like I was saying, he was the organizer of, well, maybe it's an organizer too, but that's a new job. We'll get to new jobs in a little while. He organized the sheet metal warehouse builders protest in Arizona in 2020, and he is a freelance restroom patrol consultant for various East European democracies. Now, if I could just dig a little deeper here, Rich, you are, well, this theology of dread, I'm a believer, or actually, technically I should say I'm a disbeliever, but this in 1986, that was the year of the dung beetle that you started doing this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a time, I like to refer to them as the conveyors of scat.
Well, a lot of people around here call them by that terminology, that name, that nickname. But I got to be honest, I don't understand why a big grocery chain like Some Call It Food would need a produce section location consultant.
Well, there are certain talents that I bring in sniffing out the essence of produce when I lived with the kumquats on the kibbutz. Well, I used to kibbutz myself quite a bit, but then I found the centering, and it's something that I don't believe that even the astronauts understand when the tang gets into you.
This sheet metal warehouse builders protest in Arizona, why? I have heard it called corrugated when people speak about it. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, in my following, I appreciate it when my disciples, they both understand the difference between the corrugated and the subjugated. And between the two, it's sort of a yin and a yang of the way that we like to express our love to one another.
Okay, now, you're an old guy now. You were born back in 62, I guess it is. Your parents are famous, in a sense.
In a sense, I suppose. I mean, my mother was a lyra instructor, and my father was a tractor repairman. We lost him when there was an incident, and he was in the compound that we lived in. There was a time that he was visiting a farm, and a cow that was prepping itself in a green room, if you will, on the second floor of the barn fell on top of him. It was supposed to be part of a show called Meet Cute, where chefs would encounter their well, you know.
Oh, okay. I don't think I want to know any more about that, but I do want to know something. You have a book right now that's very popular. It's about hormones. I understand that I saw it when you were in the draft stage, and you were talking about enzymes. I guess somebody self-corrected you, or?
Well, I mean, I think they misspelled the title when I say when I speak of hormones. It was really the early formative days that I spent in the Dutch brothel. So.
And we have some video of that, but I'm not supposed to show it in the dinner hour here.
Yeah.
Last thing, because I want to give other people a chance to talk. The book that you wrote under a pseudonym, which is called Health Hoaxes Hacked, that seems to make some points that are in direct opposition to your hormones book. I guess you corner the market by arguing on both sides of the fence.
Well, I believe that if my disciples, I shouldn't be saying this, but none of them are allowed to own television. So if they buy my arguments on one side, then if I make arguments to the contrary, then this doubles my audience, doubles my income. So.
Okay. Well, you know where he's coming from, doubling his income. There's another investigator who came with me tonight who doesn't really need to double her income because it's already 7 or 8 figures. I forgot which. But Sally Forth is an outreach officer of the increasingly obvious Republican music concert promoters. She's a research fellow for the Go Fund Someone Else Big Telescope Planning Commission, and she's been a chief apologist for the Mental Illness as a Chosen Paradigm tax avoidance group. And I understand, I have to get this clarified. Let me go to this first. You're supposedly the discoverer of the fire extinguisher and the raincoat. How would your biographers have figured that out?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you, I am just tickled to be here. Thank you, boss.
Well, we are too.
Back in the 1890s, this was a past life experience that I was involved with, where I was trying to put out a fire, and it was not going well. But the rain came. The rain came, and it put out the fire. And so I had prayed to God, and the rain came. Now it soaked my culottes, and I said to myself, well, there's got to be a better way. And so there came the idea, the raincoat and the fire extinguisher at the same time.
Well, I'll be dadgum. Let me back up. You're representing some increasingly obvious Republican music promoters. I guess they have a pretty stripped down catalog if we're talking about rock and roll, huh?
Yes, it's mostly, let's see, I believe it's just Lee Greenwood now is the only one in the catalog.
Okay, and so there's a lot of reprises of
Ted Nugent, I believe, is another one. Ted Nugent is a very popular act.
I've heard of him too. Now this you have the Go Fund Someone Else big telescope planning committee. Why would we need bigger telescopes?
Well, size matters with telescopes, as you know.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a full moon through a small telescope? It doesn't work.
I hadn't ever thought of it that way, but let me ask you something about this book you have right now on the bestseller list. It's called God Looks Back, on a career that spans eternity. Now, what comes to mind immediately, I'm sure a lot of authors would like to, have God sit down and chat about things, but how do you approach somebody like God?
Wow, I love that you asked that, boss, because God, in fact, contacted me after reading my previous book about police work in the astral plane, and she said she was very unhappy with the previous biography that had been written about her. She felt it was highly inaccurate, and would I do a look back? God Looks Back.
Now, I understand, for example, she doesn't like athletes.
No, she does not. She created all 32 NFL teams and all the 150 or so that from the entire history of professional football. And so she doesn't pick a favorite. Now, she's not a big fan of Washington, but there's a black sheep in every family.
Oh, okay. I've got one more investigator who came with me tonight, and he came with a trail of, well, let's look at it systematically. First of all, Chip Shardage is currently the head caddy at the legitimate political, well, how does that sound so familiar? The legitimate political golf course. Something in the news reminds me. Anyway, that's in Loon Lagoon, Florida. He's a past president of the Food Warmers Technical Specifications Group. And they're headquartered in Bake Riddle, Montana. He's an MC of the wildly popular Do It To Yourself program on National Public Radio. And if I remember correctly, because I'm a sports fan, he was an all-state extra wide receiver playing for the St. Pence High School in Devil's Toothkit, New Jersey. Chip, I am trying to understand the difference between a head caddy and the other caddies there at the lagoon.
Well, the head caddy is, of course, the organizing force that keeps all the other caddies together. And since Florida leads the nation in loons, it's an especially difficult job. And we're very proud of the fact that we're the only place in Florida where there is legitimate political discourse.
Political golf course, you mean?
Yes.
Golf course. And I guess you keep all the balls clean.
Yeah, well, there's the ball washers are they're sometimes we use some possibly people that may have gotten into the country illegally to wash our balls.
Yes. Apprentice ball washer.
Right. That's how that's in fact how I started my career, boss.
Okay, let me ask you about this. Why do you have specifications? I mean, these food warmer specifications that you are in charge of. Why would you even need, food warming?
Well, it's a very technically challenging. I, in fact, am the inventor of this process, and it's actually, you've heard of freeze-dried.
Yeah.
This is actually freeze-warmed. So freeze-warmed, the process for freeze-warming is entirely different than freeze-drying, and I am happy to say I wrote all the technical specifications for it.
Okay. I'm going to check them out. And the last thing, I have watched, it has to be late at night, I've watched some of your do-it-to-yourself programs, but for the most part, that's kind of adults only.
Yeah, well, as you know, boss, I spent most of my adult life doing it to myself, so I thought I'd try and go viral with that by putting that on YouTube. But I want it to be known that no animals will hurt in the filming of these videos, and all the puppies will return to their
Speaking of
rightful
animals, let me ask you about your book. It's kind of controversial, the stalking the original coffee bean. Why did you have to stalk it?
Well, boss, the beans just kept moving on me. I just, and plus, stalking is second nature to me, so it seemed like a good fit.
Okay, and before that, you had written a book on cryptocurrency as lunch money.
Yeah, I got my idea from kids, and so in fact, I'm thinking of branching out and doing an NFT where I take kids' refrigerator art and use that as in addition to my crypto book.
All right.
I think you have a fascinating life story. In fact, I'm looking forward, if you someday have a biopic, Sharknado.
Okay.
I like the way this guy thinks.
I'll tell you what.
You get a free round at our golf course just for that.
Yeah. Look, you can tell these people are highly qualified at some things. So I'm going to ask them to comment on the stories behind the stories. And as usual, we're going to start at the top. Now, it's been a while, but just recently we had a Groundhog Day. And every time we have a Groundhog Day, it's, well, are there going to be 6 more weeks or not? A lot of people still view this as just your ordinary, recurrent holiday, but everything is political these days. Now, for the people who are not political by nature, this was just another example of 6 more weeks to see about C, meaning the Section C area of Medicare programs. And I've seen those commercials so many times that I could recite them for you. But there are people on the right. I want to tell you something. They think that global warming is a hoax, and so they believe that they have just 6 more weeks to deal with this crisis, okay? That's where they come from. There are also people on the left. People on the left can't stand all this talk about stop the seal, and so they think we only have 6 more weeks of that to put up with. So there you go. But I think we're going to be dealing with certain things for a lot longer than 6 weeks, and let me get to those. First, we should take a look at what's going on in Trump world. And I'm not talking about the fact that his accounting firm says you can't rely on our statements because they lied on the statements, meaning somebody in the Trump organization or one of the original Trumps themselves. And of course, in the big scheme of things, Ivanka is now being subpoenaed to say what she knows or pretend she doesn't know by the committee. But let's look at what's really going on here. The National Archives has just turned over a bunch of documents that the January 6th committee wanted to look at, and it turned out a lot of these documents are either torn up and then put back together or glued back together, or they have chocolate stains all over them. The chocolate stains, I'm not sure what they are, but I have heard some stories about plumbing problems in the White House, and there may be a connection. Another thing, though, when Republicans realize that a lot of documents are torn up or need to be glued back together or were delivered in very large voting machine-sized boxes, they said, uh-oh, maybe we need to deal with the laws about seditious behavior. And so you saw a story recently in the Washington Ghost where a bill was entered into the record which would make the first attempt to overthrow the government a misdemeanor. And I think this was directed at big Mr. Trump. I think that's who it was directed at. But one reason this became a problem was that witness tampering started to become part of the political dialogue. One of y'all told me that there was a real problem with some of these people who were being tampered with.
Well, he did show me, one of the witnesses showed me evidence that his protective seal was removed. And so I believe I believe him when he says he was tampered with.
Well, one way that a lot of foolish business got started was when the Trump organization started to look for slates of electors that could be used to challenge the vote that was actually taking place in America in 2020. And they were advertising good seating and all expenses paid for people who would sign up to be fake electors. And that then led to another.
I was just going to say that I heard that part of their fundraising lately is they're distributing tamper mints.
Well, okay.
Hey, boss, I want to, maybe after the show, I want to talk to you about tampering, because in Loon Lake, Florida, it's generally $50 to get tampered with, so I'm wondering if maybe we can find a more economical source to tamper.
I'll see what I can do for you on that, Chip, but I can't promise anything at this point. Now, you know, the story got recycled again now because it wasn't so much the president who needed his charge reduced to a misdemeanor. It was a bunch of fake electors and a bunch of people who were, I don't know, storming the Capitol. Another thing that was and you know what this, ultimately what happened? The RNC was going to censure the people who tried to tell the truth. They eventually ended up, it was on the news this afternoon, they have now censured themselves for irregular behavior, okay, irregular behavior. I'll tell you something though, what we have going on right now is a parade of Trump personalities trying to show themselves a little bit removed from the scene of the action. Let's take Rudy G. Rudy G is what I like to call him. He was once a close personal friend when he was a lawyer. He recently appeared on America's Got Problems. I guess he looks here sort of like an ape, doesn't he?
Is there a, boss, do you have a picture of him with the costume on? I'm not.
Oh, I thought that was the.
I'm pretty sure that's just a non-photoshopped.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
Now, when he made his appearance, did he actually jump out of a cake?
I think as a food worm technician, I think they couldn't use a cake with the lighting in the studio. The damn things melt all the time.
I was actually surprised to see that he was willing to wear a mask under a certain circumstance.
Yeah, well, you know, they asked him to sing, the January 6th committee did, and back then he was saying he wouldn't sing, and apparently he can't sing. But another guy who says he wasn't going to sing is Mike Pence, and apparently he can't sing or won't sing, but he's going to dance. And so we are seeing ads already for the Ballot Bullet Ballet, which is opening soon. I think you can get your tickets now.
I thought he was performing in No News is Good News.
He is. I mean, he's multiplexing, or is that multitasking? I don't know. One of y'all explained it to me one time. That's why you have two books on the bestseller list at the same time. Anyway, another person in the orbit of the big Trump machine, Tucker Carlson, he's getting to be a little bit too dangerous even for the people of his ilk or on his side of the fence. And so he is moving his operation to a secret location, and he is starting a new program called Outfox the News. And lately, the way he's been getting in trouble is getting behind the Tucker's Truckers, which is a protest. Now, I understand the reason this was so successful in tying up interstate commerce was because truckers were taking these trucks, letting them run out of gas, and then they were parked in various places where they couldn't be moved. All right? So that's why, but you know, there was an internal email that surfaced, and that's
Yes.
one reason that he headed for the hills.
Yes, I had the bumper stickers read to me something like schmucks and trucks who give no care.
Yeah, and the other one was Freedom Convoy, I believe is what he called it. It was 2 words instead of 1. It wasn't freedom. Anyway, there's a lot of Trump imitators. For example, Florida and Texas are new areas where people are behaving like a lighter version of Trump, or in some case, simply a different variation on the plague. Or you know how it is these days with viral elements, they mutate. So in Florida, one thing that's mutating is the Governor DeSantis, and you were telling me that a lot of people want to de-Santa our holiday system. But anyway, in Florida, because of what the governor has in mind, you can't wear a mask anymore unless you're going to the beach, and there you can wear a scuba mask. You also, because of all of this hoo-ha about critical race theory, you can't say anything that makes white people uncomfortable, and that's a law now. Y'all hear about that?
And, you know, normally I would not be upset about this, but when I do get upset, I am very uncomfortable. And there has been a lot of talk about gazpacho in the news lately. And with an avocado crisis, I just feel like maybe there are some topics we don't need to be discussing because it makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know about the rest of you, Jeff.
Well, that
I'm actually quite resilient, unlike you, but so I'm working towards being a more resilient person.
do you see her point? I mean,
Well,
excuse
fine,
me.
mister.
Do you understand her point there, Rich?
As long as no one shouts that the sandals are sold out, I'm fine.
Okay. Anyway, before I leave this question of Florida behind, you have the Don't Say Gay law. That's what it's being called. But there are a bunch of older people in Florida, and they want to be part of the dialogue as well. So their new theory is Don't Say Gray. They get together in townhomes and townhome communities, actually, and they just like to get together and say we are of a certain development of mature chronological year, but they're not old. They're not gray.
Perhaps they're chronologically challenged, I think.
That's a word that we can, I mean, we can agree on that phrase. I'll say that. Now, I'll tell you what, Florida is you know, really, Florida is out front on many right-wing propositions, but Texas is ahead in one area, and that area is in banning books. Now, I'm not talking about 1984 on the floor. That was just a rumor that they banned that. And I went to a high school library the other day, and there were plenty of copies of The Art of the Steal. But there are some books that are being taken off the shelf. One of them, this book by Laurie Dogel, What's Making My Lizard Smile? Now that sounds sort of risque to me. I can see why they want to keep that out of the hands of, well, I mean,
Boss, no, is it just the book that's banned, or am I prohibited from making my lizard smile?
well, I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people are wondering what does make a lizard smile. Well, there's another book along the same lines, this one by Arnold Shoes. I figured out what my thing is for.
You know, boss, I wish that people would actually read these books before they ban them, because I read it and it turned out the thing in question, yes, it sounds suggestive, but the thing turned out to be a panini maker. Completely harmless. Just no one's used one in 20 years is all.
Well,
And I hope they don't ban my favorite, which, you know, from childhood was, Are You There, God? It's Me, Abbott. It's on the governor's reading list.
yeah, I think he reads it weekly, right? I think. I see. I mean, I understand your point.
I just ignore these little slights. It's all right.
I'll tell you though, something here, and I'm getting a briefing on it right now. When you talk about things that, you know, they've been built and they haven't been used in a long time, another book that is being banned in Texas, Why Build What You Can Print? And I think this is talking about those newfangled printers that, you know, can print anything that you can imagine. Chip, is that, I mean, you're the authority here, is that some sort of weapon on the front page, or is that just something that kids put in their pocket before they use their lunch money?
No, that's actually, oddly enough, that is a food warming freezer that's used in the process. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I didn't think we were at that point in technology and we could actually 3D print one of those. I will look into it, boss.
All right, very good.
I find this upsetting because you can't build a community out of one of your printers, Chip.
Well, if it's a big enough printer, and if it's a small enough community.
I suppose if one is leading a coterie of Smurfs.
Well, all these people
as with other things, when it comes to chips and printers, size in fact matters.
Okay, all right.
You may
Look,
be an expert on small blue heads, but this is the edge of your expertise.
let me tell you how this book banning process is being sold in Texas, or how they are trying to sell it to the voting public. First of all, they are saying the books are not actually being banned, they're just being tanned. And we have a picture here of the facility where they are supposedly tanning books. I don't know, that looks like it could be used for anything, like, you know, you could be doing food warming or something in a place like that. Second tack they used, they started telling Texans who were worried about, you know, the winter because of ERCOT's performance last year, they were telling people, take those books you'll probably never read or you have read and burn them for fuel. That will save the utilities a lot of money and liability, okay?
I remember you had a fellow on last month who was talking about that. I got in touch with him, ended up giving $1,500 to his company. I haven't heard from him since, but I imagine he's doing really good things.
Well, he's probably doing R&D or something like that, right, Chip?
Yeah, R&D is critical across all industries. So I would suspect that was a very wise investment on your part.
In fact, I saw your show on Do It To Yourself about R&D.
Yeah,
But the D I didn't understand, but the R. Now, the third approach to convince Texans to ban their own books, they are floating a story that Tesla is building a new vehicle that runs on paper products. Now, I've seen a picture of this thing, and frankly, I don't understand what that tail is for.
Well, I believe it's a modified tailpipe, so it emits. It's not quite a zero-emission vehicle, boss, but instead of emitting obnoxious vapors or an electric car that delivers water, it actually slime goes out the back end.
I get it. It's making a deposit. My dogs told me about that. Let's go to the top of the pecking order here. Let's talk about what's happening for Mr. Biden. Well, people are saying these days that Biden is underwater, and they're usually talking about his numbers, but I have some insights, and I guess my investigators do too, about underwater. You see, when Trump came into office, he said he was going to drain the swamp, and we have pictures from that period, but And you were explaining to me that this was a long drain pipe.
Yeah,
to get
what they
some-
had to do, they had to install a long drain pipe. They actually had to bring the White House plumbers out of retirement in some instances, but they needed to install a very, very long drain pipe because they were having problems with the White House toilets being clogged up
And
with paper.
And I
with
don't think there's so
chocolate.
much insights as hindsights, because you have to get right up underneath the plumbing.
That's right. Well, in the Biden administration, they filled that swamp back up. And you know why? Because the White House is now submerged in that swamp, and I am told it's for security purposes. I read somewhere else in one of these documents we've seen about submarines circling the White House, and that couldn't be happening unless Biden's White House was actually underwater. But usually, when they talk about Biden being underwater, they're talking about the economy and jobs.
Didn't you have an observation about the armed forces, or the submarines?
Well, they've actually they've been secretly following all presidents. I think Obama actually spilled the beans on that as part of security systems for all
Bill, the
presidents.
original coffee bean.
The
is-
coffee beans.
Yeah,
in
that's
fact,
what
yeah.
got you on the track.
Oh, I was thinking of an observation you had made between the new divisions of the submarines versus the
Oh,
marines.
yes, that's in fact correct. But
It's hierarchical stuff
yeah,
again.
there are in fact.
Y'all are always confusing me with
Yeah,
that.
Rich is in fact correct. They now have submarines and dom marines.
Well, I just wanted to tell you, there is a secret jobs report that Biden gets that we have never seen. I was looking at it the other day because I'm interested in fisheries renovation consultants, and I understand they are not being offered many jobs lately. But one thing, and you said there was a boost for Biden in the economy because of Prince Andrew?
Yes, he entered into a settlement. It was with the media. He spoke with them and they agreed not to talk anymore about his improprieties and his sexual improclivities with Epps teenagers. So, on the other hand, he was also chased out of a settlement of refugee children. So, not everything is quite as rosy for the prince as
that explains that. Now, one thing Biden does have an opportunity to do is to nominate someone for the Supreme Court. So let me quickly remind you what presidents have said about Supreme Court nominees. First, Biden himself on the campaign trail said he would definitely nominate a mammal. A mammal, yeah. But if you go back in time and think about this, Trump, when he was campaigning, said, well, if these judges make the right decisions, they get bonuses. And if you go back even further, back to, say, 1981, there were rumors before Ronald Reagan actually appointed a woman to the Supremes. There were rumors that he was going to appoint a male hula dancer. So a lot of people are bitching about who's going to get nominated even before we know who it is. Ted Cruz, for example, said that, he just said, basically, I don't believe we're going to have somebody who's really qualified here. If you're not white, if you're not male, you've got a chance, but if you're white or male, forget it. Well, it turns out Ted is a metaphysical sort of a person, and he just recently did an interview for a new agey kind of magazine. He proved he's not a racist or a misogynist because he said, when I took a body, I just said, I'll take the first one available, I don't care. I'm rolling the dice. It could be a man, a woman, black person, white person, you know. So he excused himself.
It's nice that karmically he leveled up from one of those dung beetles and now he's almost human.
Almost. But his colleague, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, he went as far as saying that he wants a person who knows the difference between a law book and a J. Cruz catalog. I think he was confused about whether there was a Cruz involved. A Ted Cruz catalog I wouldn't want to look at. But in any
Not
case...
even a Tom Cruise catalog.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities there. But here's the thing.
You don't want to be looking at that cruise missile for sure.
Okay, all right, enough cruising here. We're trying to get down to business. And I'll tell you what, Senator Kennedy, he said what he said because he has a history with J. Crew. When he was a younger man out of college, he interviewed, he was going to be in the catalog wearing some moleskin pants, and it just didn't work out. They told him, you know, you may as well go to law school, you'll never work as a model. And so he gave it up, and the rest is history, or some kind of history. Anyway, you know how that is, and a lot of people think what he really said was he wanted somebody who knew the difference between a Gestapo and a gazpacho. But I don't know what the real story is. I'll tell you, somebody else having big problems across the water, that's Boris Johnson. There's talk about all sorts of booze parties while everybody else was being told to behave themselves and stay inside. So he said recently we only drank at night, not in the daytime. But we've got some pictures from some of these booze fests. I'm not sure what these two boozers in this picture are working with. It looks like a costume, maybe something that was for Rudy to wear on TV, or maybe something for Tucker Carlson.
I believe, boss, that remember back in the day, you and I are old enough to remember where parties, they would have Trivial Pursuit parties. Now they actually have tampering parties where you tamper with people, and I believe that's a shot of a tampering party. I
see. Well, that almost explains everything, but not entirely.
Well, I can't explain everything to you, boss. Then you wouldn't have to pay me.
We wouldn't have a show if everything was already explained. Anyway, a lot of you are thinking about tax time already because it's already February. But you know, some of you are getting letters already. I got one from the IRS, or it's actually the IORS, I think. They were saying, I'm sorry about your refunds not getting there this year. The government is actually out of money. They're out of money. Did you see, did you read, are you aware of that, Rich?
In my community, we just exchange clothes and various forms of nudity, so I don't have to pay attention to these kinds of things.
Well, I'll tell you what, the IRS, since they're out of money, they are offering an alternative in-kind sort of payment if you're entitled to a refund. And I think I'm going to ask for some of the pairs of moleskin pants just because, because Senator Kennedy made me think about them. Anyway, there's a whole lot of bad news in politics, but people can always relax here in this country because we still have our football games, you know, and I'm talking about the Super Bowl. There's something about this football.
Looks a bit suspicious to me.
I think it might be deflated.
It reminds me of a certain someone. Now, I wasn't going to mention this.
Well,
but,
go ahead and mention it.
Well, as you know, Tom Brady has retired after only 44 seasons. Can you believe it?
Actually, I was told that there's no Brady this year because the Brady Bunch was being taken off TV after 44 years.
Well, a bit of both. I think Jan may have had a hand in Tom's decision to retire as well. Possibly Marcia. He was being outshined by Marcia a lot.
It's always Marcia.
Marcia. And you know, as we spoke before about tampering, we've been talking a lot about that tonight.
Yes, we have.
And since Tom Brady came out of his last season without a Tampa ring, See what I did there? I am such a card. I am such a card. I'm sorry.
That was so cold.
I'm terrible.
I'm going to put you in one of my
No.
food warmers. I think.
Oh, mister. Now, in reality, though, the comedy's over. Let's go back to the seriousness.
Okay.
Now, I am told that he wants to be seated at NBC Sports as a commentator directly opposite Drew Brees. That's the next move he wants to make, so he can compete with Drew Brees to see who is the greatest commentator of all time.
So it would be like Goat C. Sort of.
Or Gacote, I suppose it would be the pronunciation of that.
Well,
It would be Tom Brady and then what's his name and then Mr. Potato Head.
Now, why would that be, sir?
Who is the greatest commentator of all?
Oh, look what...
I apologize for the last few minutes, but normally this doesn't happen. I think it's because the food wasn't warm when we were having the appetizer.
There are still a few bugs in that equipment, I admit, boss.
Okay, and I understand some of that food you have to warm it because it's still alive, right?
Yeah, in certain rare instances, that's true, and that perhaps is what happened this evening. So I will look into it, boss, and get back to you.
Okay, you're going to look into it. I'll tell you what, though.
Let me make a note of that.
Right, make a note of that. The Super Bowl, as perhaps you know, the Super Bowls are increasingly popular because halftime is so popular. And so what's happened this year is that halftime has been expanded. I mean, they expanded halftime so that people could get more of what they wanted. So in the first halftime,
Snacks at the concession stand.
yeah, and somebody has a well, I don't want to say that they're the exclusive vendor, but they have some sort of an arrangement. I know your religious groups have certain things that you eat because of the photon diet. Mm-hmm. And so when your people go to a game like that, I guess they're looking for certain things.
Well, we're very used to having our marriages in stadiums, so we're very well acquainted. You know, we come with our various apparel and our sisters and brothers in the Hare Lamas and the Hare Krishnas, and they usually have their own fight afterwards in the parking lot.
Have you actually witnessed this?
I have.
He was a witness at the mass ceremony. Ah. Mass marriage, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Or it was the mass.
It was a weighty affair.
Okay. Now, I was going to say that a lot of the commercials this year, like everything else in American life, have become very political. So for the benefit of those on the right, we saw some commercials about living it up in the red zone. And I think we know who that caricature is supposed to represent. But we also had commercials that were talking about Trump penalties. For example, unnecessary roughness, false starts, games of delay, ineligible receivers. And so that's the political side. But another aspect of this first halftime was that the owners of the football teams, back up a minute, the owners of the football teams came out in their class action suits. And I was almost breathless when I saw them, but apparently they didn't do anything. I thought they might, chant something in unison or...
Like, God loves everyone except Dan Schneider.
Yeah, they might chant something, like I said. But they, as far as I know, they just...
They didn't chant, show us the money?
Well...
I think that was their plan, but I think they decided that would be a little bit rubbing salt into the country's wounds.
Well, it was part of the business plantation. It was a Zoom from the business plantation, so maybe they were saying, show me the money. But, okay, let's go to the second halftime, though. The second halftime, just as important as the football game, was the musical part. And the original plan was they would have all of the musicians who were still on Spotify. Well, you can tell from the lineup here that wouldn't be much of a show unless you're a big fan of the Milk Pictures. They're pretty interesting, and the Permafrost Petticoats used to be among my favorites, but
Weird Al Brockovich.
yeah, him too. By the time they printed up this this brochure, he had already retired. So anyway, it wasn't going to be much of a show. And so for that reason, it was changed at the last minute. You know, that's an audible, okay, if we're talking football. And Marjorie Taylor Greene Day came on and jammed with Soup Dog and Dr. Dreyhound from the Emin Embassy on Get Downing Street, and they performed a brand new version of Gazpacho Macho Man.
Oh, I love that song. Gazpacho Macho Man.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to have gazpacho with the Macho Man.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. I
didn't-
am having a real pip of a time. This is the first time I've left my home in 3 years. So
I knew that, and
Pardon
I
me.
had to arrange it with the CIA to.
pardon my partying. Excuse me for partying. What is that song? That's yes.
I'm just getting a bulletin here that I didn't want to read that. I mean, we only have so little time to pursue all the stuff we have left. Anyway, while I'm still on the subject of Spotify, you probably noticed the other day that Neil Young, in explaining why he left that platform, he said, "I'm not getting any younger." I guess he's the only one that could actually say that and have it mean something. But anyway, a lot of artists you see who were not doing that well, they hadn't been banned from anything, they hadn't had their Twitter accounts suspended, they decided
They haven't been
to,
sued by dozens of disciples over some bad beverages.
yeah, that. Since they hadn't had any bad press and pretty much no press, they decided to also withdraw their spoken word or music features from Spotify. One example is Def Hooter. He pulled his music from Spotify and he thought he was going to shoot right up the charts. Actually, it didn't work out that way. He got investigated by an agency of the government because he seems to now be tied to that Havana syndrome. The CIA couldn't figure out for a while what that syndrome was about. All these people complaining about vertigo and blurred vision and feeling nauseous. It turns out that when he was working, I mean Def Hooter, when he was working at the Tortured Crab restaurant, he was selling people some food that I suppose had not been properly food warmed.
Yep. If you don't read the technical specifications, you're going to run into those issues. I tell people all the time, boss. But did they listen? No, they're a bunch of Michiganers.
That's what seemed to happen now. A lot of programs like ours, at the end of the year or at the beginning of a new year, they look back and they say, these people left us this year. Look at all the wonderful things they left us in their life. My investigators went out to talk to their favorite psychics, and we wanted to present something different. We wanted to talk about some people who were born recently, who at some point in life will be very famous or very well regarded. The first one is Fritz Boomba. I'm trying to remember what Fritz Boomba is going to be responsible for. Oh yes, a cure for productivity. I think a lot of us are looking forward to that.
I've met his sister, Boomba.
Yeah, she's the same way, right? She carries around a notepad all day and writes memos to herself.
And when there's a different form of that, it's trans boomba as well.
Another person who has a career ahead of him in the distant future is Rogat Pels. And I am told that Rogat Pels is going to create a fake news vaccine so that maybe we can get out from under this problem of fake news, but I guess it only works or only will work in the future if people agree to take the fake news vaccine, the jab, so to speak. The problems, they never end. And then finally, there's a guy named Arf Mumu was recently born. Later in life, he's going to invent an app that will enable you to talk to your dinner. I'm not sure if that's before you eat it or while you're eating it.
I'm on it, boss. I'm on it.
Yeah, check that out for me. And then, of course, there's a lot of new laws that are going to be in effect this year. There's a minimum wage. There's a paid speech movement. You know, everybody has free speech, but those who want to pay for it, they can go to Facebook, which is a new platform, and on paid speech, people like Tucker Carlson, one of the first people to sign up, they'll be able to say anything they want. There's new laws about surprise medical billings, and I know about that because I just got a surprise medical billing the other day from my doctor, Dr. Hop. He says that we had a televisit, and he dealt with my fear of badgers, and he prescribed me some time with an ecdysiast. I don't even know what that is.
It's a stripped down version of a professional.
I see.
So I can take an action item to find out what the naked truth is here.
Okay, if you can do that for me. The last thing I'm going to say is we have a movement for animal welfare, and so my dog is going to get $31 a month starting this year. And I guess with that $31 a month, that's some stuff I don't have to get from the produce section of the Some Like It food store in Alaska. And folks, we hope you do well. There's a new law coming your way wherever you live this year that's going to change what you're doing, and we hope that means you're going to do it better, and please don't do it to yourself, because that never works. Right, boys? Right, ma'am?
What a great time this has been. Oh, goodness. I feel like I'm 47 again.
You
I like
are.
the earrings dangling from your lobes. I like the pumas on your new bathrobe. I like the purple hose you wear sometimes. I like nickels, not as much as, excuse me while I talks to my accountant. I like the swordfish you keep in a tank. I like the T-bills you keep in the bank. I like the purple hose